The panel had just started, the lights were bright, and the tension was already thick in the air. Kellyanne Conway leaned forward, her voice sharp and deliberate, ready to strike. She looked directly at Jasmine Crockett and delivered the opening blow. "You are nothing but a loud distraction. People like you scream, but they never solve anything." The audience reacted instantly. Some gasped, others laughed nervously, and the camera zoomed in to capture every detail of Jasmine's face. Kellyanne pressed on, her words dripping with scorn. "You call yourself a representative of the people, but what have you actually done? You grandstand on television, you chase headlines, and you play the victim card. That's not leadership, that's theater." The moderator tried to interject, but Kellyanne was relentless. "You don't deserve this seat at the table. You're a product of outrage culture, not real political work. People like you embarrass Congress. You embarrass the nation." Every word was designed to cut deep, and the audience could feel the sting. It was humiliation live on air, and Kellyanne Conway was savoring every second of it. The panel was billed as one of the most important political debates of the season. Broadcast live on national television, it brought together heavyweights from across the political spectrum. Kellyanne Conway, once the sharp strategist behind Donald Trump's rise, was known for her ability to twist words like a weapon. Jasmine Crockett, the fiery congresswoman with a reputation for fearlessly challenging the establishment, sat across from her, refusing to be intimidated. Between them sat the moderator, struggling to maintain order. Around them were other panelists, seasoned journalists, former officials, and policy experts. But it was clear from the start that all eyes were locked on the duel between Conway and Crockett. The stakes could not have been higher. The discussion centered on scandals that had shaken the Trump family, leaks that had fueled weeks of speculation, and the growing demand for accountability. Kellyanne's role was to defend, to spin, to shield. Jasmine's role was to cut through the spin, to drag the truth into the light no matter how uncomfortable. The audience in the studio was restless. Supporters of both women filled the seats, their reactions swinging the atmosphere from gasps to cheers within seconds. Social media was already ablaze, clips from just the first exchange going viral in real time. Hashtags with both their names trended instantly. It wasn't just another panel. It was a battlefield, and the nation was watching to see who would dominate. Kellyanne Conway did not waste a moment. She leaned in, her voice rising above the moderator's attempt to move on. "You can throw slogans all day long, Congresswoman, but when real policy comes to the table, you vanish. You're addicted to cameras, not solutions." Jasmine Crockett shot back without hesitation. "You want to talk about cameras? You lived on Fox News. You built a career on spin and deception, and now you think you can lecture me about integrity?" The audience roared, half applauded Kellyanne's precision strikes, half cheered Jasmine's fearless defiance. The moderator raised a hand, but the women were locked in, their duel unstoppable. Kellyanne smirked. "At least I've been in the room where decisions are made. You're just a guest who got invited because you yell the loudest." Jasmine narrowed her eyes, her voice sharper now. "And in those rooms you lied, manipulated, and fed this country poison. You think experience means truth? No, it means you perfected the art of corruption." Gasps echoed across the studio. Kellyanne leaned back in her chair, pretending to laugh it off, but her eyes betrayed the sting. She tried to recover. "Congresswoman, the only poison here is your obsession with tearing down anyone who disagrees with you. That's not leadership, that's chaos." Jasmine struck harder. "Chaos is what you built. You covered for a president who mocked the law, who laughed at accountability, who divided this country with every breath. You want to talk about humiliation? Let's talk about the families humiliated when their jobs disappeared while you defended tax breaks for billionaires." The crowd erupted again, applause crashing against jeers. Even the other panelists struggled to stay neutral. A journalist tried to cut in, saying, "Let's keep the focus on policy." But Kellyanne interrupted with a sharp wave of her hand. "Policy? This woman doesn't know the meaning of the word. She hides behind outrage because she has no achievements to show." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice steady but searing. "My achievement is that I refuse to let people like you rewrite reality. I refuse to let manipulation become the norm. You can call me loud, you can call me dramatic, but at least I'm not a liar who smiles while the truth burns." The tension reached a boiling point. Kellyanne's smile hardened. She jabbed a finger toward Jasmine. This is why America is tired. Tired of the theatrics, tired of the noise, tired of frauds pretending to be leaders. Jasmine didn't blink. And America is tired of being lied to by people who treat politics like a stage play. You tried to humiliate me tonight, Kellyanne, but humiliation requires shame. And I don't carry shame for speaking the truth. Do you? The room froze. Even the moderator sat in silence. The exchange had turned from a shouting match into something heavier, deeper. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens. This wasn't just spectacle. It was confrontation stripped bare. Kellyanne struggled to fire back. She forced a laugh, trying to dismiss Jasmine's words, but the impact was clear. The balance of power in the room had shifted, and Jasmine knew it. Kellyanne Conway leaned back in her chair, adjusting her jacket with a triumphant grin. She thought she had landed the final blow. The moderator tried to wrap up the segment, but Jasmine Crockett raised her hand and leaned toward the microphone. Her tone was calm, but her eyes burned with precision. You say I have no achievements, Kellyanne. You say I chase headlines, but let's look at you. For years, you sold this country lies. You stood in front of cameras and defended the indefensible. You called it alternative facts. You turned deception into a career, and tonight you thought you could do it again. But I came prepared. The room hushed. Kellyanne's smile faltered slightly. Jasmine reached into her folder on the desk and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She held it up so the cameras could zoom in. This, she declared, is a transcript from one of your closed-door strategy sessions. Your own words, recorded and leaked. And do you know what you said? You said the American people are so distracted that, quote, we can sell them outrage like candy. You called voters gullible. You laughed about how easy it was to manipulate them. The audience gasped. Even the moderator leaned forward, stunned. Kellyanne snapped back quickly, her voice raised. That's a lie. That's taken out of context. But Jasmine cut her off. Oh, it's not out of context. I have the full recording and I'll be releasing it publicly after this panel. The whole country will hear you mocking them, mocking the very people you pretend to fight for. The studio exploded. Some cheered, others booed, but no one could ignore what just happened. Kellyanne opened her mouth to counter, but Jasmine spoke again, this time sharper, louder. You thought you could humiliate me, but humiliation is when your own words betray you. When your own arrogance becomes the weapon that cuts you down. Tonight, you didn't humiliate me, Kellyanne. You exposed yourself. Kellyanne's face hardened. She tried to interject, this is political theater, nothing more. But the audience drowned her out with applause. Hashtags began to trend instantly online. Conway, exposed, and Crockett strikes back. The moderator looked overwhelmed, trying to regain control of the panel, but the moment had already slipped beyond anyone's grasp. It belonged to Jasmine now. And then she delivered the line that turned the entire room upside down. Kellyanne, you tried to make me the story. But from this moment on, the story is you, your words, your contempt, and your own humiliation. Remember that when America hears the tape. Silence. Then, like thunder breaking, the audience erupted into standing applause. Kellyanne's expression froze. The camera caught her blinking rapidly, as if calculating how to spin this disaster. But for the first time, her words failed her. The applause rolled through the studio like a wave, carrying Jasmine Crockett's words far beyond the stage. For a moment, the cameras caught Kellyanne Conway sitting stiffly in her chair, forcing a smile that could not mask the unease in her eyes. She tried to compose herself, leaning into the microphone once more. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled. This is a stunt. This is cheap political theater. This so-called transcript is nothing but a desperate attempt to smear my name. Jasmine Crockett isn't fighting for the people. She's fighting for attention. But the audience no longer seemed convinced. Even the moderator, who had struggled to keep the debate on track all night, looked skeptical. He leaned forward and asked quietly, Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying you have verifiable evidence of this recording? Jasmine didn't flinch. Yes, and the public will hear it. Not in a headline, not in a rumor, straight from the source. I don't traffic in alternative facts. I deal in truth. The crowd erupted again, louder than before. Viewers at home flooded social media with clips of the confrontation, captions blasting across screens. Crockett drops the bomb. Conway caught on tape. The humiliation flips back. Kellyanne shifted uncomfortably, trying to pivot. This is exactly what's wrong with politics today. We destroy reputations with leaks and lies instead of fixing real problems. Jasmine, you should be ashamed of dragging the American people through this circus. But Jasmine was ready with the closing strike. She leaned forward, her voice steady and resonant. The real circus is when leaders laugh at the people who trusted them. The real shame is when those in power think the truth can be hidden forever. Tonight is not about me. Tonight is about accountability. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Kellyanne, maybe it's because deep down you know it's overdue. The words landed with the weight of finality. The studio fell into a charged silence before exploding into cheers and applause once more. Even some of the other panelists, who had remained quiet throughout the exchange, nodded subtly in agreement. The moderator raised his voice above the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all the time we have." But it was clear the debate was far from over. The battle lines had been drawn, not just in the studio, but across the nation. Clips of the clash went viral within minutes. Commentators on every major network replayed Jasmine's closing words, dissecting their meaning, debating their implications. Supporters hailed her as fearless, a truth-teller who had taken on one of the sharpest strategists in American politics and won. Meanwhile, Kellyanne's allies scrambled to contain the fallout. Some called the transcript fake, others demanded proof, but the damage was done. The image of her caught off guard, silenced and overpowered by Jasmine Crockett had already been seared into the public's mind. In the days that followed, headlines spoke of the confrontation as a turning point. "Crockett flips the script," one read. "Conway cornered," declared another. On talk shows, in podcasts, and in living rooms, the conversation replayed endlessly. For Jasmine Crockett, the message was clear. She had faced humiliation and turned it into triumph. For Kellyanne Conway, the legacy of the night was not her words, but her silence in the face of evidence. And for the nation, the moment stood as a reminder truth once spoken cannot be drowned out.